welcome to Friday evening Brighton Rocks Q&A with filmmakers. Just a brief word beforehand. Thanks to everyone for being a part of Brighton Rocks 2020. It's really fantastic to see everyone engaging with our watch parties, going on the Rocks screening room and watching our curated screening sessions, messaging us about what you've been enjoying. So thank you very much for helping me and my team make this happen. So this evening we have a very exciting event. Over the next 3 hours, we're going to be meeting the cast and crew of feature films that are screening right now on the Rock screening room. And the first film that we're going to highlight is The Silence After Life. Written and directed by Daniel Thomas Freeman, starring Sally Mortemore, Emma Spearing, and Lucy Alfred. It is an experimental drama and meditation on grief, spirituality, and the beauty of nature, with minimal dialogue and immersive score and sound design. Following a serious accident and bereavement, a lonely woman in her 50s experiences intense visions as she loses her voice and runs away from home to live rough in the beauty of the English woods. So personally, I was struck by the maturity and ambition and scope of this film, and very impressed by its experimental use of silence in its effort to depict grief. So it's brimming with ideas and emotion. It's a beautiful film. And right now we're going to meet the cast and crew. So I'm going to let them into the meeting. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hear me? Hi.
Ooh.
Great. Daniel, Emma, Sally, and Lucy, welcome to this live streamed Q&A. I'm sorry about the delay. We had a technical issue, but I believe that we are now live streaming to Facebook. And
can I just ask? Can you see me? Because
right, Sally has gone momentarily.
No, I can't. Oh, got it. There we go.
There we are. You're back. Wonderful.
Just turn your
Lovely.
Hey.
So, Daniel, real pleasure to me and all of you. As I've just been saying, it's a beautiful, profound, poetic film. We love it here at Brighton Rocks. I know that it's a work of great passion. So I want to hear all about it from start to finish. And basically, over to you, one by one, perhaps starting with Daniel, and then each of you. Just give us a brief introduction to yourselves. Tell us how this project came about and your main inspirations. So.
Okay, yeah, well, I'll start then. Yes, so I'm Daniel Thomas Freeman. I've been a semi-pro musician, composer for about 35 years. And about 5 years ago, I had this mad idea to make a film. And I had wanted to do it when I was 13, and I was just too young and too shy and all the rest of it. But over the years, I realized that camera technology had got that much cheaper. I got much more confident with working with lots of different musicians, which gave me the confidence to work with artists, with actors. And also I got invited to co-score a feature, as a film 4 feature called Catch Me Daddy. And the experience of that back in 2014 was amazing and wonderful. And I got to sort of sit in on see lots of early edits and just see a bit of the process. And that sort of gave the inspiration to do The Silence After Life. So that's a quick potted history.
Thank you very much. So perhaps Sally, can we?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm Sally Mortemore. I play Catherine. I'm not going to say how long I've been an actor for. I was thinking about it the other day and it scared me a bit. I thought, wow, have I really been in the industry that long? I've done lots and lots of theatre and bits and pieces on screen. And I met Dan doing a music and poetry piece with a cellist called Maydan Narvi. And yeah, Dan just started talking to me and said that he wanted to make a film. And then he gave me a script. A little while later, that's how the film came about, really, with me anyway.
Lovely. No, that's a great story. So Emma, can I hear from you?
Yeah, hi. I'm Emma Spearing, and yeah, I actually trained quite late as an actor, so I graduated in like 2013. And my first job that I had after drama school was actually working with Sally on a lovely all-female theatre piece. And so actually Sally contacted me when they were sort of looking for actors for this film. And she actually contacted me when I was at Glastonbury and said, you know, are you, you know, would you be interested in working with me and obviously meeting Dan? And I was like, yes. So, so then I met Dan, we did a little short film, I think, to start with, and just to see, I guess he was auditioning me. And then offered me parts of Claire in the film. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And finally, Lucy.
Hello, yes, I'm Lucy Alfred. It's nice to see everybody. So I'm an amateur actress, and Dan. I'm not professional. I don't get paid for it. This is my first professional job. Dan and his wife Val happened to be in the audience of a production that I was doing. There she is. With my AmDram group, Sutton Amateur Dramatics Club. Got to give them a little shout out. Then they emailed our chairperson at the time to say they'd seen me and they wanted to get in touch with me about a film. And that was what happened. So I met up with Dan and Val, we had a chat. I also did a couple of sort of like test mini films because I'd never done anything like that before, only ever been on stage. It's a completely different process. But it also helped me get into the character of Marianne. And then, then we did the feature.
There we are, the rest is history. So thank you very much. Let's kind of get to some of the core subjects about this your film, and particularly the use of silence. And you know, it's quite unusual to have a film with very minimal dialogue, and that pulls it off so well. So perhaps the question for Dan would be, what drew you to this theme and this means of expression? And then the actresses, I'd like to know about your experience of working without dialogue. How was that? What methods did you use to really pack that punch that you do? So great. Perhaps we could start with Dan.
Yeah. Some of it was just practical. So I'd never made a film before, let alone a feature. So that was the reason for the short that Lucy came in on. So she was our main actor on the very first short we did, and that was really just a test run. That was, can we make a film at all? And then the second short was not just testing Emma out, it was testing everybody out, including myself, and just testing out techniques and, you know, how do we make this bigger thing? And by using silence, it just made the film a bit more practical. You know, it made it possible. It cut down the cost a bit. So some of it was that, but that wasn't the real main thrust of doing it. The real main thrust was I was very influenced by, there's a book by Sarah Maitland called The Book of Silence, which is a fantastic, wonderful, wonderful book. And it just talks about the value of silence and how actually some of the biggest things that happen to us internally and emotionally and spiritually happen in those moments of silence. I mean, I've had that myself so I've actually done a silent retreat for 3 days. I've only done one, but I have done it. And it is a very challenging, but also very amazing experience. And so it was really sort of trying to reflect on that. And also I'm a great believer in, we live in a very, very fast culture. And it was a way of slowing things down and trying to just get a lot more reflective and meditative. So that was one of the big reasons for using silence. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I noted a quote from the book you quoted, The Book of Silence, as an inspiration because it documents how the edges of our material world can blur and shimmer when we are faced with silence. I thought that was very beautiful. Do you think, in a way, words are unnecessary to expression, perhaps even a kind of form of corruption, and that there's a purity in just the visual? Was this one of the ideas?
I don't know about that necessarily, but I do think I think there's some quote about when people looking at verbal and non-verbal communication, that actually what we get a huge amount of communication through non-verbal, and verbal is not necessarily a massive component. So again, it was a sort of reflection on that. And of course, it is a story about grief. And when we go through grief, we tend to get very, very quiet. And it was also reflecting on things like, the silence of the grave. It's literally a comment on that. So there were lots and lots of things coming in. So, and I think Emma sort of made some good comments in the past about, what happens with grief and silence and sitting with people in silence. So perhaps you want to come in there, Emma. Yeah, landing you in it, but.
Yeah, thanks. Well, what shall I say? I mean, I think I need to probably give you a little bit of background actually about what my experience with grief is, which is that one of the things that drew me to the part of Claire is that I lost my identical twin sister. It was about 6.5 years ago now, and since then, really, I've been exploring what it is to really go through extreme grief and to try to articulate that, because I think that everybody goes through grief and we don't talk about it enough in our society, and it becomes something that's hidden, and it's not helpful for it to be hidden. It's really I think probably what Dan's referring to is I feel that, I think silence, being with somebody in silence, I think especially in this, I don't know, in our country, we try to fix people that we see are hurting or in pain, and we try to make it better. And the thing with grief is that you can't make it better. You can't take it away. It's not going to go away. But what you can do is you can sit next to somebody and just witness and be with them. You can't fix them, but you can just be with them. And what I really loved about the character of Claire is that that's all she does. She doesn't try to fix Catherine. She doesn't ask anything of her because she's experienced her own grief. She just allows space for her just to be. And so in a way, it's funny because the silence that Sally has, I almost didn't notice it because we're so busy we listen so much with our bodies in the piece. We're listening to all the cues from the body. There is a language there. And she didn't need to say anything. And my character didn't need her to say anything because I understood, the character understood. And I was interested in exploring that because my experience of the people that have been really incredible who've supported me is that they didn't expect anything of me. They just turned up and sat with me. And I think it's a conversation that we need to have. And the more that we articulate, try to normalize, what it is to experience grief, I think the better. So
very well said. And that helped your character. There was a kind of therapy in her development too. So great. Perhaps we can hear from Sally Mortemore about your experience of silence.
Well, I think silence, I think people find silence quite uncomfortable a lot of the time in today's society because it is so noisy and so busy. But I've never found silence a problem. And I think it might be to do with the fact that I trained as a dancer. So all expression is with the body and there are no words. But as a person, I do love words as well. So my career went in a way where I used dance and words together in physical theatre. I'm quite a silent person myself, and I suppose I've gone through times when people have castigated me for it. So at school, if I didn't join in discussions, because I only wanted to say something if it was really important, I would get told off for not joining in. And the same thing happened when I did my master's degree in 2005, 2006. I tended to listen to everybody else talking. And at the end of the time that they were talking, they hadn't really said very much. So I just thought, well, I'm still like that. I only speak when I have something important to say. So silence for me has never been a problem. And recently, I broke my leg.
Sorry to hear that.
Sorry?
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. But the reason my leg got broken was that a dog ran into it, and half of my tibial plateau was just smashed to smithereens. But the two guys who were with the dog left me on the ground and walked off. And it wasn't until I was speaking to somebody last week, and she said, well, were you screaming? So I said, no, I wasn't screaming. She said, well, were you crying? No, I wasn't crying. I was in so much pain that everything had internalized. And I could actually hardly speak. And she said, well, he didn't think anything was wrong. That's why he walked off. And the penny dropped. It hadn't crossed my mind that people expect people to be verbal all the time. And when you're not, they just think, well, there can't be anything wrong then.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about your method, particularly in this film, for conveying essentially all these complicated emotions without words? They
come from inside. If they come from truth inside, then they will come out. That makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And Dan, perhaps can you talk about your role as a director and coaxing emotion visually?
I have to say a lot of it, the reason I searched out good actors was because I knew I was going to need to rely on them. So because I was a first-time director, I knew that I needed to find people who could sort of bridge that gap between my inexperience and what the film needed to be. Now, having said that, obviously I did actually create backstories for every actor to try and give a sort of sense of where each character was coming from. We did talk a lot about what the film was going to be. But it was about relying on each actor to do their own thing. And also, because, again, partly because of my inexperience, but also mainly because when I've worked with musicians, I've mainly worked with musicians I've known or I've met. I've not searched out a particular sort of musician. It's been, I've met this person and they do this thing. So how could that thing fit in with what I'm doing? And let's glue it together and let's see if we can make something. So it's more of that sort of attitude. It's not about finding the perfect person for the character that's in my head. It's more, so I've written this character, I've met this actor, so we just need to sort of merge the two together to a point where it actually works. So it was more on that sense, I think. It might be something that our lovely actors here can sort of reflect on a bit as to what I did. But
yeah, well, it certainly did work. Perhaps that could be a segue to another really interesting and kind of experimental aspect of your film, in that, we have 3 actresses, 3 female characters, strong characters. We have some men, but they're peripheral. So we have the pastor, we have the deceased husband, and so this has a lot of female agency, very strong female characters. Was this purposefully a kind of direction that you wanted to?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It wasn't really sort of reaction to the underrepresentation of women on film, although it's a good reaction to that. It was more, some of the most interesting people I meet are women, and strong and complicated and interesting women. And to be quite frank, I work in IT, which is almost entirely men. So it's nice to sort of flip it around. But this goes back to even when I was a kid. You know, I went to an all-boys school, and again, it would be really nice to sort of get that female thing going. And I just always had an attraction to strong and complicated and interesting women. So when I started writing stuff, it was like, well, that's what I'm going to write about. And hopefully, yes, it's me writing from a male point of view because I'm a man, but hopefully I'm leaving enough space for each actor to bring in their own experience and actually turn it into something genuine from the sort of seed that I create in the script. But it was a very, very definite choice,
Okay.
as was the choice of making Claire lesbian. That was a very, very definite choice, because she could have been any person really in that role, but it was a very definite choice to say, well, actually, there's no reason she can't be, and actually I want her to be. And that's partly because one of the things that really I found a real conflict when I first became a Christian was the whole massive divide between the LGBTQ culture and Christian church culture. And I really struggled with it. So this is a little thing that I can do to try and pull the two cultures together and help them understand each other a little bit. It's not a big part of the film because it is, Claire only turns up halfway through the film, but it is an important part of the film. So that was another reason, and again, another reason for having lots of strong female characters is just to sort of challenge some of the stereotypes out there.
Right. Well, we're all for that. Can we hear from the cast about their feelings and this dimension, the gender aspect of the film? Perhaps starting with Lucy, actually, as we've not heard from you.
Yes. It's funny, isn't it? Because I didn't realise until quite a long way into the filmmaking process that was a decision that Dan had made. And I was like, oh, hang on, everyone's female in this film. I am a feminist, as we all should be. And when I realised that, I was like, yes, Dan, this is great. Thanks, and it was just brilliant being part of a cast surrounded by very accomplished, amazing, inspiring women. As an aside, having the opportunity to act with Sally was, for me, like being a child in a sweet shop. It was just incredible. So it was just brilliant and inspiring just to see the way that she performed. And kind of going back to some of what you were saying earlier about the emotional side of things and how the emotion came out without any words, that was something I hadn't really ever had to do, that sort of method acting. Certainly not in that great detail, and also not under scrutiny with a camera in my face. And I wouldn't have been able to do it had it not been for personal things that had gone in my life where I could draw upon those emotions, but also Sally. Her emotion really made me react and respond emotionally. I actually ended up crying. So yeah, it was just having that opportunity just to be with her was awesome. And I think equally it's great that Dan has made that decision, because it just isn't reflected enough in cinema at all, nor is it reflected enough in the church. So having that blend, being able to creatively express some contentions and some things that have affected you, Dan, and also me, was brilliant. So it's just a great opportunity to be part of this project.
Fantastic, that's really great to hear. So Emma, can we hear from you?
So I actually thought Lucy's just spoke so well actually about the subject of women, and we need to be more represented. Personally, I love working with other women. I feel that I think especially with this film, there was something so intimate about it. Yeah, there's I don't know. I have a very I don't know. There's something very instinctive and sort of, I don't know. We're sort of tuning into something very, very deep with the subjects, and just working with women in that frame is just really beautiful. I don't know. There's something about listening. You're getting to some sort of deep core emotional stuff that I don't think that this sounds really awful, doesn't it? But I'm not sure that I could get to that state so quickly with a man. There might be other things in front of that. Whereas a woman, I don't know, there's sort of a nurturing, a sort of maternal sort of relationship. It felt very sort of witchy at times, and very earthy and very sensual. And I can't imagine working. I can't imagine not working with a woman in that sort of way. I don't know if I'm making any sense. I'm sorry. Okay, you got it. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. If we can hear from Sally.
I've worked with a lot of companies dominated by men, and when you're touring for a long time, I did a show we were on the road for 8 months, and the women are quite cool. There were only 2 of us in the company, and there were about 8 men, but they started getting picky with each other, and there were arguments in lifts, in hotels, and they just get annoyed with each other all the time, but women just keep calm. I suppose that's the yin and the yang of us. They complement each other. So working on this was a very calm, very peaceful experience. And yeah, I found it very spiritual, really spiritual. And I'm not, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not, I'm not religious. I am very spiritual. So it was just a very lovely experience. And I think the more that happens, the better. And you sort of look at what's been happening at the moment in the world, and the countries who are, dare I say this, the countries that are led by women seem to have dealt with the virus better. Dare I say that? Yeah.
It's a fact, Sally.
Yeah. But see, I'm still terrified of saying things like that in case somebody comes along with a sledgehammer and bashes me in. But yeah, that calmness that women have.
Absolutely. No one's going to dissent. And so just to fill you in, because we had this technical problem, we realized that it wasn't capturing all the audio to the live stream. Fortunately, it's recording our meeting, so we're going to relay it as soon as we can. So I've just been trying to correct that while I've been listening to you. I think it's probably best to carry on, especially as we are recording it. Sorry about that. Perhaps let's talk about just stories from set. You made it, classic indie style without a big budget. So you guys had to, think carefully how you were gonna, do that. And I'm sure there's stories to tell. So perhaps I can hear from you.
Yeah. So yeah, we did have a very limited budget because I haven't been to film school. So I had a few contacts, but not in the way that I could basically drum up money. So the film became possible basically when I had a bit of a windfall in terms of cash from my job, a little bit. And so, yeah, we had to be extremely careful with the money we spent. What was a real bonus to us was that and we had so many people wanting to be part of the film or offer their houses or whatever for free or for very minimal cost. So that made it possible. So like my dad and my stepmom, they let us use their house for 6 days, things like that. So so that made it possible. And then in terms of crew, it was extremely minimal because, again, we're just trying to keep things as small as possible to try and make it doable. So actually a lot of the film was literally me, Sally and Val, who's sitting over there and waving, my co-producer and wife, I should say, and generally all-round lovely person, who yeah, so it was literally quite a bit of it was just the three of us. So a lot of the stuff in the woods, it's just us three, and to keep it really down. And I think that's reflected in the intimacy of it, is because you look at behind the scenes photos from most films, and you might have 10, 20, 50, 100 people there. With this, it wasn't that, and that, although it was a struggle to make it with so few people, actually really helps get that really close in feel. So I think that really, really helped. Yeah. So, and then things like, just our actors all being, particularly our professional actors. So that was Emma, Sally, and he's not here today, but David as well. They were just so helpful in filling in the gaps. So things like, when we did the big church scene, there's a big daytime church scene, and I just literally wasn't ordering people around loud enough. People weren't hearing me. And Sally said, you just need to speak up a bit and sort of let them know what to do. It's a really obvious thing, but because I'd never done a crowd scene before, I was all like, oh, could you do this and could you do that? And as soon as she said, no, just be loud, I'm like, right, okay, I need to speak up. And it, of course, made an enormous difference. So it's things like that where my lack of confidence in that particular area, just hugely supported by the actors, and that was another massive positive in getting professionals involved. And that's why it was also so important to me that although we couldn't pay them much, we did pay something, because it was a reflection of just how much they were helping. So that's enough for me. So how about somebody else?
Yeah. And from the cast, any good production stories, memories, best memories?
I have one, yes.
Go for it,
it's a funny one, actually. It was when we were filming the scene in the kitchen, Sally and me, and I don't actually know I can't remember if it made it into the final cut, but I was putting crockery into the dishwasher, and again Sally reminded us of the importance of continuity, which I hadn't thought about. And I actually thought, I always notice that when I watch a film, and they put something down in one place and it appears somewhere else. So that was a really fun lesson, just to remember the exact order in which I'd put things into the dishwasher. And I'm sure it probably helped Dan for later things in terms of continuity. So yeah, that was a fun little anecdote from the experience.
We don't have any IMDb goofs to
No, there's an awful lot cut out, believe you me. And that's, but also, actually, there was a thing coming out of the kitchen scene that day. So there's a hall scene near the very beginning. Sally runs into a hallway, and Lucy follows her. And we were just running so short of time. I wanted to do most of the film on tripod to get that really static, sort of like a silent feel to the visuals, if you like, just being very still and be. But we were running out of time, and I just didn't have time to put it on a tripod, so I just did it handheld. But it just so works for the scene. I did forget to turn the proper microphones on, so the camera, the audio is actually the audio off the camera. So I had to clean that up like crazy, but it works. It's got all that energy in that beginning scene, and it sort of gets the film, started really quickly, so that we sort of earn that we then earn the right to sort of go slower and get deeper and get silent. So yeah, that sort of came out of an accident, but it worked really, really well.
Fantastic. Well, we're drawing to the end of our kind of allotted time. perhaps we could hear one by one what you're currently working on and what the future has in store for us. So Daniel first, perhaps.
Okay, so I will fully admit that actually getting to the end of The Silence After Life has been very hard work, basically because the post-production was all me, with a little bit of ADR help from Sally and Emma, so that we did a one-day session with each of them, but it took me 2 years to do all the post. So to be honest, I'm pretty exhausted, pretty knackered, but so I don't think there's going to be anything actually starting this year in terms of production, but I'm hoping to start a new film next year, so I'm scripting that up at the moment. We're going to do it more freeform and more experimental in The Silence After Life, and what I'm thinking is, it's very, very early days, but what I'm thinking is to do something about what happened when the AIDS pandemic came out and church reaction to that, and just how awful that was for me. I wasn't a Christian then. For me, seeing some of the really horrible church reaction that you got from certain areas of the church, really unfortunate and horrible. And how do we look at that now? So that's sort of my idea on that. It's very early days, but that's sort of an idea on that. I've also got a more conventional science fiction script, which I'm about halfway through. So I've written about 70 minutes of it, which I would dearly love to make. I really, really would love to make. But that would be more expensive to do than Silence After Life. So hopefully one day we'll be able to make it. What I'm going to do is finish the script off and probably actually turn that into a book for the moment, and then hope that doors open and we're able to make it. So yeah, something experimental as a film next year, and finishing off a script this year and maybe turning it into a book next year. So quite a long answer, sorry.
Thank you. No, they're great projects. Lucy?
So nothing super creative at this time. I was planning on doing another play later this year with my group, but we obviously can't do that. But I've just been doing little play readings over Zoom, which has been quite nice. But yeah, I'm excited to hear about Dan's forthcoming projects. So yeah, but that's me. Nothing super creative recently.
Yeah, you've got time on your side. So Emma, can you hear me?
Yeah, so well, it's been an interesting year. I've been writing a show which is called Whole, which is an autobiographical piece of theatre about grief and death and losing my sister. And it was Arts Council funded for R&D. And I had Latitude Festival. I was supposed to be performing in the woods around a fire, and I was supposed to be premiering it at the Cambridge Junction in October. And unfortunately, that's just not happened. So it's an interesting time, and it's sort of looking at, is there a digital version of the show? I've obviously been spending time doing more writing, but I just need to get in the room with my wonderful director again for another few days, just to sort of pull it all up. And and I'm actually working with this wonderful woman who is like saying, let's write something sort of quite true, autobiographical, as a TV pitch, which is really exciting, but who knows where that will go, because it's a tricky world, that one, but we're working on that as well, so that's quite fun. Yeah.
Great to hear. And finally, Sally?
Absolutely nothing. There's nothing in the pipeline whatsoever. It's incredibly quiet.
That's not quite true, Sally.
What? Not quite true.
Remember, I was talking to you about a project, so that'll be next year. So you have got one little thing.
But I don't know what it is. So I don't know what it is.
Well, no, I don't know quite what it is yet, but next year, okay? So you've got one thing.
So next year, I have something in the pipeline, but I don't know what it is.
Well, fantastic. That's exactly when the best ideas and projects turn up, when you're not expecting them.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we're going to draw to an end. it was a real pleasure talking to all of you. And thank you for your time and sharing your film with us, sharing yourselves with us. And thanks for being part of our festival.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Real pleasure.
Love
And
you, everyone.
yeah.
Yeah, lovely to see you. Yeah.
Bye.